The obesity rate among American children in the early 1970s was 5.2%. Today, it is 21.1%, a fourfold increase. This is not about discipline or bad parenting. It is about architecture. The school lunch changed first. The children followed. A lunch tray in the early 1970s carried a clear, regulated promise. Real food, prepared daily, designed to meet a child's nutritional needs with precision. Federal law required every reimbursable school lunch to include 5 distinct components: 2 ounces of cooked meat or a protein-rich legume, 3/4 of a cup of vegetables or fruit, a slice of bread, a pat of butter, and 8 ounces of whole milk. These weren't guidelines. They were legal mandates enforced by USDA and codified in regulations published in June 1973. The logic behind this pattern was metabolic, not just culinary. The 2-ounce meat portion provided about 15 grams of protein, supplying nearly a third of a child's daily requirement. The fruit and vegetable serving, when built from dark greens or citrus, could deliver far more than the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C and vitamin A. Whole milk brought calcium and high-quality protein, while the butter, limited to 1 tablespoon, offered essential fatty acids and helped the body absorb fat-soluble vitamins. This wasn't a system built around supplements or engineered additives. The tray was constructed from whole foods, each one chosen for its nutrient density and its ability to keep children full through the afternoon. A typical menu might feature a breaded chicken patty, 3/4 of a cup of steamed carrots and peas, a slice of whole wheat bread with butter, and a glass of milk. In Detroit, a cheese and tomato melt appeared alongside tomato sauce and mixed vegetables. The point was simple: recognizable foods prepared from scratch, with the kitchen staff, often called lunch ladies, measuring, plating, and serving meals with practiced hands. Nutrient analysis from the era's USDA school lunch survey shows that a standard Type A tray delivered about 850 calories, roughly 1/3 of a child's daily energy needs, and a comparable share of protein, calcium, iron, and vitamins. This approach wasn't accidental. It was the product of congressional hearings, nutrition science, and policy memos that prioritized satiety, growth, and metabolic balance. The lunch was meant to be finished, not picked over, a plate that left children satisfied, not searching for snacks an hour later. Every element of this meal pattern depended on active kitchen labor. Vegetables arrived unchopped. Meat was cooked and portioned on site. The bread was sliced, the butter was real, and the milk was whole. This was the architecture of the 1970s school lunch, a system built to deliver real nourishment through real food every single day. By the late 1970s, the school kitchen was no longer a guarantee. Economic pressure was mounting from every side: rising wages, inflation, and unpredictable food costs. Districts, squeezed by budget cycles, began searching for ways to deliver federally required meals without the same level of skilled labor. The answer arrived in the form of industrial microwaves and rethermalization units. These machines could take a pre-cooked, frozen entree and bring it to serving temperature in minutes, bypassing the need for a stovetop or a trained cook. Central commissaries soon replaced the neighborhood kitchen. In these regional facilities, bulk meals were prepared, portioned, and shipped out to dozens of schools each morning. The lunch tray, once the product of on-site work, chopping, simmering, baking, now traveled miles in a refrigerated truck, ready to be reheated and served. The operational logic was simple: fewer cooks, fewer hours, and a predictable product. Trade publications from the 1980s highlighted that districts adopting heat and serve technology could cut labor hours by up to 30%, easing the strain on shrinking nutrition budgets. By the mid-1980s, the shift was visible in the numbers, where roughly 70% of schools had full-service scratch kitchens in the early 1970s. That figure dropped to just over half by the end of the decade. The trend only accelerated. By 2025, only 17% of school districts report serving scratch-cooked meals daily, and a mere 3% rely exclusively on scratch cooking. The rest operate with a skeleton crew. Their main task no longer food preparation, but equipment operation and inventory control. Scratch, the job of the lunch lady, changed fundamentally. Once responsible for seasoning a soup or kneading dough, she now scans barcodes, monitors retherm units, and logs temperatures for compliance. Training shifted from culinary skill to food safety paperwork and supply chain management. Oral histories from veteran staff describe the transition as a loss of craft, a move from cutting carrots to managing vendor trays. This operational overhaul did not happen in a vacuum. It was driven by the hard math of labor costs and the promise of efficiency, not by a sudden loss of care or discipline. The infrastructure of school food was being rebuilt around the logic of speed, scale, and standardization. The result was a system where real food became harder to serve, and the daily lunch tray became less a product of hands-on cooking and more a matter of logistics and machinery. When school kitchens faded from daily life, the very nature of what the government shipped to districts began to change. In the 1970s, the United States Department of Agriculture procurement offices distributed raw commodities, blocks of butter, 40-pound wheels of cheese, sacks of flour, crates of eggs destined for scratch cooking. These so-called bonus commodities arrived unprocessed, ready for lunch staff to transform into meals. But as on-site kitchens disappeared and labor costs rose, districts could no longer handle bulk raw ingredients. The United States Department of Agriculture responded by reworking its supply chain, forging contracts with third-party processors to convert surplus dairy, meat, and grains into shelf-stable, ready-to-serve products. This shift introduced a new logic: value-added processing. Instead of a block of cheddar, schools now received individually wrapped cheese slices, processed and portioned for speed. Where once a shipment of chicken meant fresh breasts or thighs, it now arrived as breaded, frozen patties, engineered for uniformity and long shelf life. The incentive was clear: processed foods could be stored for months, shipped across states, and reheated in minutes, all while reducing the demand for skilled kitchen labor. By the early 2000s, the majority of USDA foods, formerly known as commodities, were routed through industrial plants before reaching the cafeteria. The outcome was a lunch tray built less from farm output and more from factory output. The ingredients list grew longer, the food became more distant from its source, and the school meal became a product of national logistics rather than local cooking. The architecture of lunch had shifted, embedding industrial steps between the American farm and the child's plate. Industrial food processing brought a new wave of chemicals into school meals. Synthetic dyes such as Red 40, Yellow 5, and Yellow 6, Blue 1, and Red 3 replaced the natural colors of fruits and vegetables, turning cafeteria staples into bright, uniform products. These dyes, once rare, now appear in everything from flavored milk to packaged desserts. Studies have linked several of them to behavioral changes in children, including increased hyperactivity and attention issues. By 2024, California, Virginia, and West Virginia began phasing out the most controversial dyes from school menus, responding to growing scientific evidence and public concern. Beyond color, modern school foods rely on flavor enhancers, modified starches, and stabilizers to mask the effects of storage and processing. Packaging itself has become a source of exposure. In 2025, the Food and Drug Administration launched a $20 million study to investigate microplastics and heavy metals leaching from heat-resistant trays into reheated meals. Early findings point to the release of bisphenol A, phthalates, and microscopic plastic particles. These chemicals are now under scrutiny for their health risks. This shift marks more than just longer ingredient lists. It signals a fundamental change in what children are exposed to at lunch, as processing and convenience reshape the very makeup of food. Obesity among American children has quadrupled since the 1970s. In 1976, just over 5% of children aged 2 to 19 met the criteria for obesity. Today, that figure stands above 21%. The change is not explained by a lack of rules. Since 2010, the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act has enforced stricter calorie caps, whole grain requirements, and limits on sodium and fat. But the system these rules govern is built around ultra-processed foods. More than 55% of school day calories now come from industrially engineered products, such as frozen entrees, flavored milks, and shelf-stable snacks, delivered by the nation's largest food service companies. The paradox is sharpest in sugar compliance. The USDA's own audits show that 92% of school breakfasts and nearly 70% of lunches exceed the agency's own added sugar limits, largely due to the sweeteners and starches required to make processed foods palatable. Meanwhile, the infrastructure of school food, centralized kitchens, heat and serve lines, and vendor contracts locks districts into this model. The outcome is clear in the numbers: more regulation, more processed food, and a generation of children facing unprecedented rates of metabolic disease. The system changed, and so did the bodies of the children it serves. School cafeterias today serve more ultra-processed calories than ever. Over 92% of breakfasts exceed the USDA's own sugar cap. This is not about willpower, it is about infrastructure. Until institutions prioritize real food over industry convenience, children's health remains engineered by supply chains, not nutrition. The architecture still decides the outcome.